Breeze Nation, what is going on? It's your boy George JC, also known as Mr. Meaty to most of you guys. But we have a very special edition of the Windy City Breeze today because today officially has been dubbed Derrick Rose Day by Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago. January 4th, 2025 will forever be known as Derrick Rose Day. And so we're here. I am here to give you just a little bit of my appreciation and love for Chicago's very own son, Derrick Martell Rose, and just some of the things that he did that made him just a special player, but most importantly, a special person to the city of Chicago. And what better way to start it off than obviously at the very beginning of his NBA career, being the number one pick in the 2000 NBA draft, which obviously was a long shot for a lot of us Bulls fans. No doubt we thought that we had no chance of getting the number one pick. I know I didn't. I thought that we would probably be in the realm of maybe the number two at the most, but the number three pick seemed like where the Bulls would be. And then when the balls fell our way, it seemed as if maybe there was some gods on our side, some people that kind of made sure that Chicago got the number one pick. Hey, I'm just saying. But thank goodness, because we were able to draft Derrick Martell Rose. And I know at that time it was either a toss-up between him and Michael Beasley. Now, a lot of people were clamoring for Michael Beasley out of Kansas State. I know that I looked at him as a player that I appreciated his talent. I saw his talent. Obviously, he was a double-double machine. He was a very unstoppable force in the paint, could score at all three levels. But to me, it was just something about Derrick Rose that you couldn't overlook. The athleticism, the explosiveness. I mean, you saw that on display all the way back from his beginning in Simeon. Even in Memphis, obviously, but the highlights that you saw of him in high school just kind of showcased what was to come in a sense. The amount of dunks, the height that he had on his athleticism, the jumping ability for a 6'3" guard was just uncanny. It was never seen before, and I didn't want the Bulls passing it up. So I'm very thankful, first of all, personally, that they gave Derrick Rose the chance to play for his hometown. And of course, we know how that went. For the first 3 years, I mean, it was just special seeing Derrick Rose continue to grow year after year, that by the third year into his 2011 season, he became the youngest MVP ever. And that record, that accolade still holds up. And to be honest with you, I don't know if that will ever get broken, which is why, in my opinion, I think that he's a special player, that he should be considered for the Hall of Fame because of that accolade alone. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, outside of that, the other parts of his career, for the most of his career, it doesn't really add up to being a Hall of Famer, but there has never, ever, ever been an MVP in the league that has never made the Hall of Fame. And the fact that you are the youngest and you got that at 22 years old, it shows what the potential trajectory was for Derrick Rose. It showed just how special a player Derrick Rose was and could have been. You look at all of his counterparts, a lot of the people that talk about how special he was, to the Jamal Crawfords, even the LeBron Jameses, the Kobe Bryants, who saw the work ethic and just the time that he put into his craft, going from 1 year where he didn't have a jump shot to the next year where he had a jump shot, being reliable at the three-point line, an efficient free throw shooter, not just relying on just his athleticism like a lot of players do in the NBA, but actually adding to his craft, taking his craft seriously. You saw offseason after offseason, Derrick Rose getting better and better, so that by that third year, he was a elite force. He was somebody who was special. And the fact that he got his MVP in the middle of a prime LeBron career, mind you, when LeBron was at the peak of his powers, going into the peak of his powers, that's also special in my opinion, because a lot of people felt like, well, Derrick Rose probably shouldn't have got that. Maybe it was recency bias. Maybe it was because LeBron was getting too many MVPs at the time. I think that Derrick Rose, that MVP was well deserved. You're talking about the most valuable player for that team. That team, they were, I believe, the number one Eastern Conference team in the regular season at the time. And so you're talking about a guy who, had you taken him off that Bulls team, it was completely different. You knew that that was a guy that actually impacted the game to the point that if you do not have him on the roster, the Bulls would probably still be competitive, but they would not be anywhere near the top of the Eastern Conference. And so that's why I think Derrick Rose was so special in his MVP year, averaging 25 points, a little over 4 rebounds a game, and a little over 7.5 assists per game. And so when you put all that together, you can just see how special of a player he was going to be. And then, of course, what happens the very next year in the playoffs when they're gearing up, they're getting ready to kind of really put all the smoke on Miami. It really was a matter of them just getting kind of past the other opponents and getting back to Miami. I remember Joakim Noah saying that past year when they lost, they went into the offseason saying, we are going to work harder than any other team, and we're going to make sure that we get to the playoffs. And when we get to Miami, we're going to win this time. We're going to win a championship. And I honestly feel, had Derrick Rose not gotten hurt, that the Chicago Bulls would have probably won their first championship since the Michael Jordan days. That is what I honestly believe, because that is how hardworking of a team and how special of a team they had behind even Derrick Rose, with the likes of Noah and Dang and Taj Gibson. That was a very, very good, complete team, also led by Tom Thibodeau, a very defensive-minded, hardworking head coach who really leaned into making sure that his players held each other accountable on both sides of the ball. And so, again, we never know, because we already know what happened on April 28th, 2012. That is when Derrick Rose went down in the first round of the playoffs versus the 76ers with a torn ACL injury. I'm pretty sure a lot of you fans know where you all were. I was sitting in front of my TV just completely out of breath, had no idea what had happened. I initially thought that maybe he kind of tweaked his knee and that something was it was a minor injury and that he would initially get up. But the more and more he kept grimacing in pain, the more and more he kept rubbing his knee and kind of turning around on the ground, I knew that it was more serious than I had initially thought. And it is unfortunate. Actually, one of our guys on the show, C-Dub, Calvin, was actually at the game behind the basket in front row. Actually, he saw it firsthand. And all he kept telling me that day was that the entire stadium was just in complete, just utter silence. It was almost as if somebody passed away right in front of your eyes, honestly. Not to sound very gruesome or bleak, but that's how it felt. We knew that when Derrick Rose went down, that kind of took the wind out of our sails, and that took our chances from being elite contenders for a championship to almost just a competitor in the playoffs. And that's essentially what happened. Now, a lot of people are going to grill Tom Thibodeau because, of course, we were up 12 points, I believe, with about 70 seconds left, about a minute 10 in the game. And many people were saying, well, why did you have him out there? Why did you even have the starters out there? Well, come on. We know how Tom Thibodeau plays. We know how much he utilizes his starters and his star players. He wants to make sure that he finishes properly, or he wants to make sure that the team finishes properly and that there's no let up. And so being up by 12 with about a minute or so left, I personally was pissed off at first, because I understand, hey, you could have taken him out and maybe that injury would have never happened. But then again, who's to say that that injury was something that could have happened because just of how much torque and how much aggression Derrick Rose put on his body. So who's to say it would have happened to game two? Who's to say it would have happened down the road? We just don't know. So I'm not going to necessarily put that on Tom Thibodeau. I'm just going to say that, hey, at a certain point, his body just did not hold up. The amount of aggression, the amount of force, the amount of explosiveness that made him special actually was his downfall, which is why a lot of people say that, his speed, his agility, his athleticism, too big, too strong, too fast, too good, like all of those things, it was just a little too much for his body to endure after 3 years of playing at a high level. And so it was unfortunate to see. Obviously, after that, he became a shell of himself. There were still some very good years that he still had, even with the Bulls. But overall, you saw the decline in his athleticism. You saw the decline in the usage of Derrick Rose, because at that time, that was around the time when Jimmy Butler started to be utilized more. He made more of a name for himself with the Bulls, and then there was some, dilemmas with that. The whether or not it was an actual drama between the two, or there was just a made up story to cause some sort of friction between the both of them. You saw that there was maybe a changing of the guards and the changing of the passing of the mantle in a sense. And Derrick Rose just became more and more of a shell of himself. And then that's when the injuries started to pile up. He had another knee injury. And then there was another injury with, I believe, his back. And so there were certain things that Derrick Rose had to continue to endure throughout his time with the Bulls, and also in his tenure over his 16-year NBA career. And so That's another reason why I want to give him flowers, is because when you think about the injuries that a star player has to go through, from going to the peak of your powers, knowing that you are one of the best players to ever do it, getting the youngest MVP award, knowing that you probably can be one of the better point guards to ever play in this game, to now mentally having to go through the ups and downs of recovery over and over and over, getting multiple surgeries, multiple times off in the season, off season after off season. You're not adding to your game. You're trying to recover so that you can actually get back to a certain version of what you were. And that's the unfortunate thing. But that's also why you look at Derrick Rose as a powerful, resilient type of player. There is so much that he could have chosen to do. He could have retired. He could have said, you know what, this is not for me. He could have hung it up. There were many times where maybe he even thought about that. I remember in his tenure with Cleveland, when he was with LeBron James, he took some time away from the team. A lot of people didn't know where he was. Maybe at that time he felt like, you know what am I playing for? What am I doing this for if I can't be the Derrick Rose that I used to be, and I can't even impact the game like I want to? Those things actually come up when you're a superstar 1 minute and then you become a role player to even a bench player, to the point where even Utah waived him when they got him on the team. I mean, that can mentally mess with a person. And so the fact that he got through those moments, the fact that he got to the point where he played with Memphis, and or rather the Minnesota Timberwolves, and had that 50-point outbreak against the Utah Jazz, mind you, that showed the resilience, that showed the desire, that showed the passion he had for the game, that showed the love and the fight that Derrick Rose had for the game. And so that's what makes him so special to a town like Chicago, because he embodies what Chicago represents. You get knocked down, you get back up. You get knocked down again, you get back up again. Never ever will anybody from Chicago say that we don't work hard in anything that we do. It's about grit, it's about aggression, it's about working hard, it's about being humble, but also having that quiet, almost like assassin-like humility, where, hey, you know what, I'm gonna go about my business quietly, but just so you know, I'm gonna make sure you know my name at the end of the day. I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna put my stamp on whatever it is that I do. That's what Derrick Rose embodied in the city of Chicago, which is why so many people love this person, love him as a player and as a person, despite the ups and downs in his career. Which is why you saw a couple days ago the pop up shop having so many people, to the point where there was a line outside, and it's 20 degrees outside right now in Chicago. You got people miles and miles around the corner going across the bridge of the Chicago River, waiting to just get a picture with Derrick Rose at the pop up shop. Like, I mean, that just shows you the loyalty, the appreciation, the support that not only Chicago has for him, but the love and the amount of appreciation that he also has for his city as well. And so I just wanted to make sure that I gave Derrick Rose his flowers. His Chicago career, here's the numbers: 19.7 points per game, 3.7 rebounds per game, 6.2 assists per game. I mean, obviously, we know those numbers could have been way better. He's one of the biggest what ifs in the NBA, I believe, in sports history, because of just how special he was and also could have been. But of course, he will always be special to us Bulls fans and to us Chicago fans that saw him play. And now it's just a matter of, well, what will he do next? This is not just the end of Derrick Rose, the person. It's maybe the end of Derrick Rose, the player, obviously, but it's interesting to see what kind of ventures he will get into next. What sort of, like, maybe activities or things he will put his hand on. You notice in an article that there could be some things that he does with his own city or own community in Inglewood, and bringing that area up, like they should, and giving back to his people, giving back to his area where he grew up. That's something that I look forward to seeing. But it's going to be interesting to see what the next chapter brings in Derrick Rose's life. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see what he does in the city of Chicago. And again, like I said, I just wanted to take a few minutes to really give him his flowers. I want you guys to really get down in the comment section and just tell me what exactly you loved about Derrick Rose. What were your favorite moments of Derrick Rose? What were your favorite highlights of Derrick Rose? I know my biggest highlight was the Dragic dunk. A lot of times you saw Dragic being talked about, as even when he was here in Chicago, they talked about him like, hey, what was your how did you feel when Derrick Rose dunked on you? And he already knew. He said, hey, man, I shouldn't have jumped. Obviously, he didn't realize Derrick Rose had a 40-inch vertical at that time. Stacey King went crazy with that. That was my favorite moment in Derrick Rose's highlights in his Chicago career. What was yours? Obviously, I'll be down there with you all in the comment section as always. And as always, if you like this video, comment, share, like, and subscribe. Shout out to Derrick Martell Rose. This is the special edition of the Windy City Breeze, and I'm out.